All right, so we're here on another Sunday Sit Down. Couch Coach Live presents Sunday Sit Down, season 1, episode 8. I got my guy Steven from the Breaking the Game with Steven Gillaspie podcast, and also the founder of All Aspect Sports. What's going on, Steven?
Man, long time no see. You know,
Yes,
I know that we
yes,
haven't
indeed.
talked to each other in a few hours, so I was missing you, bro.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, man, I'm doing good. First off, just want to say thanks for having me on the show, and I also want to say, it's a great day for the killers of Breonna Taylor to be brought to justice. So just continuing to pray for that, and just want justice and everything like that for everybody, man.
Absolutely. And and like alluded to earlier, we did the top 100 show yesterday on the Football and Chill podcast, which we have developed a safe place for Ryan Tannehill. We both had it.
Yes, I'm an advocate.
Yes, yes. And I was convinced. I was definitely convinced of the Ryan Tannehill debate. It was kind of split down the line, but hey, it was a great debate. I would say the least.
It was, and all the guys, obviously great sports. They're all big boys. They can hear another side of the story and still take it. So that's always great. It's a safe space for me if I can speak my mind and everybody be receptive to it. So it was a good conversation for sure.
Yeah, it was, and it was very interesting. Like to bring up certain things of that. But yeah, man. So you just had a website launch. Let's get into that. Let me get that squared away for you. So let's talk about just All Aspect Sports and just your journey, pretty much how you got to here present day.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone who knows me, they know I'm in the Navy. I was stationed in Kings Bay, Georgia for about 8 years. And, when you stay in a place that long, you tend to, know a lot of people. So I moved to Washington State, which is where I am now, where I know almost nobody. And, with the time of the pandemic, the coronavirus, it really kind of shut the door for me to go out and meet people the way that I normally would. Right. So I've always been big into sports. I've always taken a serious approach to it, with a little bit of humor, obviously. Right. But, I started podcasting just for myself, just as a hobby, something to do. And, I started, getting into websites and, paying for stuff that, really just an average Joe shouldn't be paying for. But, if I'm going to do a show, I want to do it right. So basically I was getting all these advanced statistics and things like that and reading them on my show. And then I was like, I say a lot of numbers on my show. Maybe if I have a blog or a website to where I can post these things, I can just refer to them and have more like a conversation instead of sounding like a computer reading a lot of ones and zeros. So basically I started, looking into purchasing a website, did that. And, I didn't want to just limit myself to basketball because, yesterday I feel like I hold my weight in other sports too. Right. But I'm obviously, hey, what's up, Jeff? I'm obviously an NBA head. But so in developing this website, I wanted to cover all sports. And you know how it is, Coach, right? Like you want to do a good job with all of these. It's hard, you're going to get swamped. So basically I figured since I footed the bill, I would, reach out to folks who just like me, man, who want to cover sports, cut their teeth in an industry that's very hard to, get a foot in the door. So, reaching out to a lot of talented podcasters and writers. And that's basically what it evolved to, man. Just me being bored in an area where I've never lived before. And, eventually just put myself out there. And on the show now, I've had beat writers from all over the country. Anyone who listens to basketball podcasts knows who Ben Golliver of the Washington Post is. I had him on my show. He's like my podcast hero. So I was like a little boy watching Michael Jordan for the first time. You know what I mean? Like I got to interview one of the guys that I listen to on a weekly basis. And, I've had Bob Rathbun of the Atlanta Hawks who covers them, who's a voice. He sits next to Dominique Wilkins, every time he covers a game, who's a Hall of Famer. So, just getting to talk to him, a number of great other writers. I had my first G League guest on last week, so that was pretty cool. And yeah, man, it's basically just pursuing a dream, not just letting fear kind of overrun you. If I fail, I fail. If I fall on my sword, I fall on it. But at least I try. But I got a lot of talented guys, man, and we're all determined. Everyone wants to outwork the other, and I've got to work with great folks like you and the other people and all my other family from the Off the Ball Network who have treated me just like one of their own. And it's been great to collaborate with you guys, man. And, I'm just a blessed man at the end of the day. That's all it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the things where, if you do this and, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So, Steve, man, you are a avid LA Rams fan. So,
I'm wearing the cap right now.
Absolutely. Repping real hard. Now, I want to know your thoughts on this upcoming season. Thoughts of just like the new arena, this new era in LA for you guys, as far as the new arena and just everything that's going on with the Rams.
Yeah, right. So this is weird because when I started watching the Rams, it was around the year 2000 when they were still in St. Louis. I'm sure my accent gives it away. I'm from Arkansas originally, so I didn't hate myself enough to become a Cowboys fan. Sorry to all you Cowboys fans out there. I just couldn't do it to myself. And obviously when I was little, the Rams were good, so I started off being a bandwagon fan. Greatest show on turf. I'll get into some of these other cats later on in the show, but really super fun team to watch. And when they, as soon as the whole Spygate thing happened with the Patriots, everything started going downhill. Guys started getting older. Coaching changes, quarterback changes, running back changes, receiver changes, defense, was never really super awesome when I first started watching them, but they were, about league average and slow decline up until pretty recently. Right. And, I followed them over to LA. It broke my heart because, I didn't want to have to root for an LA team being from Arkansas, but, they're my boyhood team, man. So I stuck with them. I'm excited to see how they look in LA. Outlook for the season, though, I'm a realist. We talked about this last night. I'm a realist. I have my notes here. I want to cover the defense first. Aaron Donald, obviously one of the best players, not just defensive players, not just linemen, but one of the best players in the entire NFL. The NFL top 100, I think, had him probably where he should be. If you wanted to argue him a peg down, sure, that's fine. But I think that speaks to his dominance on the defensive end. Jalen Ramsey underperformed again yesterday. I talked about how he was overrated on the top 100 list, and I went through the numbers. John Johnson III, he's a good safety. Taylor Rapp, want him to take a step forward in his second season. After we lost some personnel there, he'll have an opportunity. But to be real, I wish it was like the NBA, right, where if you have two all-world talents, you're going to be able to do something. But it's the NFL, man. San Francisco's defense is phenomenal. Seattle's defense, we'll see. They still have some big name guys over there like Wagner and whatnot. So I don't know. I don't think that the defense for my team is anything to write home about. And then on the offense, right, we talked about Cooper Kupp last night as well. I feel like he's super underrated, second in the NFL in touchdowns, and he's I think he was 89th on the list, right, if I remember correctly. So it was like in the 80s, I think 88 or so, because I know Josh Allen was 87. Yeah, I think he was 89th. Right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And, still have Robert Woods. We lost Brandon Cooks, but, we still got Higbee and Everett at the tight end positions. The rookie from Florida State, Cam Akers, looks, hopefully he does something since we lost Gurley. And we still have Henderson Jr., who was a draft pick that we had last season from Memphis. So, McVay's a great coach, especially on the offensive end, right? I feel like we're going to do all right. Our offensive line, not one of the best. I don't know how Whitworth is still plugging away at tackle on that team, man. I think he was the first left tackle ever in NFL history, and he's still playing for my team right now. And the biggest area of criticism for my team, man, if I can be honest, is Jared Goff. We talked about this a little bit last night too.
Yes.
What I like to tell people, man, is he's this generation's Jay Cutler. He's got a big arm. He throws a pretty looking football. That's one of the things that when you see somebody argue for a quarterback that's not a top tier guy, one of the first things you'll ever hear them say is, he throws a pretty football. Like, no kidding. He's in the NFL. I hope so. You know what I mean? So he's got arm talent. He throws a pretty looking football, but man, he's only 19th in completion percentage. He's tied for 16th right now with Ryan Tannehill, who we talked extensively about last night as well, who wasn't even a full season starter. And then, you know, he's third in yards, right? Like that's one of the big things someone will argue about for Jared Goff. But look at who he's in company with, right? Jameis Winston, we all know how he did last year. He was arguably Defensive Player of the Year last season, right? Dak Prescott and Phillip Rivers, who was second or third in interceptions. So these guys who are leading the NFL in yards, you know, it's not really like the full scope of the story, right? And then to put the icing on the cake, right? Jared Goff was finished fourth in interceptions. So he's the potential of him is appealing, right? But what you're seeing on the field, you know, he got paid young. He's living in LA where he's getting to meet a lot of famous people. Like I said, he's already got his money, his incentive. He doesn't have that even that like Carson Wentz mentality. You know, I feel like if we had Wentz on this team, we would be doing better. You know, probably would have put up some points in the Super Bowl, right? But I think that we finished third, if I'm being honest, in the NFC West. Could be even be fourth, depending on how Arizona looks this season. I mean, I don't even have the confidence saying for sure that we're going to be better than Arizona this year. So I'm glad we got a new arena. Our new uniforms are okay, I guess. I'm not like in love with them. Our logo, not in love with it. There's really not a lot other than Aaron Donald to be happy about, and the hope that Jalen Ramsey returns to be in the top 5, top 3 cornerback to be in love with on this team, and Cooper Kupp too. Yeah.
So everything that's going on in this climate, we're looking at what's going on with Major League Baseball. You see how the NBA is handling the bubble situation.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest question to you now is, will there be a 2020 NFL season from start to finish?
Okay, so if you're asking me from start to finish, I will say I don't believe so. But if you're asking me if they're going to start, I'll say yes. And the reason why for that, Coach, is because of money, right? Like these owners, bottom line is what they care about. They made that very clear. They haven't communicated very well with their players. We've seen guys say like, hey, I got kids that are due this season. I'm not going to put myself at risk. We talked about it a little bit yesterday too with the Patriots, right? Like a number of defensive players for the Patriots have withdrawn from this season. You know, obviously you're going to get some of the lower end talent, right? Or some of the lower paid talent wanting to compete, right? Because unfortunately they're in a position now where they have to decide, do I pick between my health or my livelihood? You know what I mean? Because in the NFL, you know, the average player plays about 7 years, maybe if they're lucky.
Right.
And these guys can't go get a normal job when they're done in the NFL, right? So they have to make as much money as they can while they can to sustain them up until, you know, they're 70, 80, you know, hopefully 100 years old, and then they move on from this earth, right? So these guys have to pick between health and livelihood. And it's just crazy to me that the NFL, which is the league that has had the longest time to prepare, right? They've seen what the NBA has done. Dr. Fauci of the CDC, and you can argue against the CDC if you want. I'm not here to do that on the show, right? But Dr. Fauci of the CDC has come out and said, if any professional sporting league wants to continue play this season, they need to follow the NBA's example. Okay, so if you've had the longest amount of time to prepare for that and you haven't done so, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what your plan is, because, and I get the argument, right, that the NFL, you have more players than you do on the NBA. Totally agree with that. And I get it, right? Like I'm not here to argue that, but you could do several bubbles, right? Like you could limit it to like maybe a division, like each division has a bubble, you know what I mean? And you can host each division there. And then when it gets smaller, maybe take a week, establish a bubble somewhere else. Like you've had a long period of time right now, right, to be able to prepare for a season, and you just haven't done so. I think that they'll start because obviously the owners and the players care about the money, as they should. But if you're going to be traveling from Florida to Washington or California to New York, and you know you're not going to be restricting these guys to what they're going to do when they're at home either, where they have kids and wives and whatnot, or significant others or what have you. you're just like, these dudes are going to contract the virus. It's just as simple as that. Like, there's no stopping it from that aspect.
Yeah, and that's one thing too, and kind of to go back to that point where I think the NBA nailed it because I think they experienced it. Because and it's one thing, I've kind of found out what happened the night of March 11th, where essentially with Utah, where they pretty much they were thrown out their hotel and literally they had to spend the night on the bus waiting for those results.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another thing where they're like, well, we know if we get stuck in that type of situation, we can't do that because essentially those guys, if you have a game and then these guys getting kicked out and they, on the verge of leaving the city, they can't leave. They can't even board a plane to go back to Utah because they're waiting for these results. And they're in no place in Oklahoma City was like, no, y'all not coming.
Yeah.
Like everybody, like it ain't like it's a secret where everyone knows. Like even CNN broke in that Rudy Gobert had coronavirus. So
and was rubbing his hands all over the mics and acting a fool.
Right, acting a fool. So yeah, and that's one thing too. I think where the league is gonna it's gonna be interesting how everything's gonna play out. So nice little segue. So we talked a little bit about the NBA's plan. So last night, the Lakers versus the Raptors. Yes. What was your thoughts on last night's game?
All right, so I know I'm going to turn this into a little bit of an MVP discussion, right? Because you see the MVP discussion. I actually wrote a bit about this a little bit on my website on allaspectsports.com, if you don't mind the plug there, Coach. But there's a lot of aspects that are involved with talking about who the MVP should be. And if you see Kendrick Perkins on ESPN, right, it's no secret that he wants LeBron James to be the MVP. And one of the reasons is that he says, well, look at what Giannis is doing in the weak East. Everybody says the East is weak. And then LeBron James, of course, put out that tweet where he said, I've been dealing with that talk for, however long. And now it's going away because I'm in the West now. Well, what I would like to point out is that the East is not as weak. I think that we can kind of get stuck in our ways sometime and just saying like, okay, when I watched basketball, the East was weak, which was true. Right. And even some of the years, not all the years, but some of the years where LeBron James was in the East, it was weak. What I saw yesterday was proof that the East is not to be, underestimated, especially the defending champions. Roger that they lost, Kawhi Leonard. And people even forget that they lost Danny Green, too. So they lost two starters, right? And two great two-way players. But to me, like, the players that the Raptors have, right, when you talk about guys like Lowry, Van Vliet, Anunoby, Siakam, Gasol, Ibaka, the list goes on, right? Norman Powell, these guys are talented guys. They have a great head coach in Nick Nurse. And to me, it just signifies that the East is not as weak as everyone's making it out to be in order to convince people or cloud people's judgment that LeBron James should be the MVP because he's number one in the West. And I have before last night, I have a little stat, if you don't mind me sharing, Coach, here on the show.
Absolutely.
The East, if the East is weak, LeBron James cannot be MVP. And here's why. Before last night's game, the Lakers had a 68 win percentage against the Eastern Conference. A 68 win percentage against the Eastern Conference. The Bucks, contrary to, in the Western Conference, had a 71 win percentage against the stronger Western Conference. Now, you tell me how hard you want to hold on to that comment that the East is weak if you want LeBron James to be MVP based off of that. Because if the East is weak, LeBron James can't be MVP. Because if you look at how they're doing in their respective conference, I believe the Bucks have an 88 win percentage against the East, and the Lakers have an 83 win percentage against the West, right? But if you look at how they're performing in each other's conferences, the Bucks are doing better against the West than the Lakers are doing against the East.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, right? It's crazy when you actually look into it, right?
You're right. When you look at the numbers and like you do, how you break the game down. Mm-hmm. You break it down to that way where it's like now, we talk about, that the East is weak gets convoluted, essentially. Just do that alone.
You don't want it to be weak if you want LeBron James to be your MVP.
Correct. Right. And this way, like, right. And now you make the case for Giannis in a sense. Again, which I think that's always was the case from the jump. But there's going to be some outliers, Mo.
Of course.
I didn't say that out loud. But we're going to have outliers, but it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
We'll continue with some NBA bubble talk. So, the one thing, let's get into this. So, the team that has impressed you so far.
The team that impressed me so far. Now, when I went into evaluating this coach, I didn't go off of like, did the best team perform the best, right? Because you expect that. I went off of expectation against outcome, right? And to me, I'm glad we waited until today to do this because last night, holy cow, did the Indiana Pacers show out. Holy cow, did the Indiana Pacers show out. The Sixers, I interviewed Mark Narducci of the Philadelphia Inquirer a couple weeks back, right? And he spoke to me about how disappointing the team was. I mean, it's hard to shy away from that. But according to him, right, and you may call him a homer, but he's not the only one. A lot of people were picking the Philadelphia 76ers as a dark horse out of the East because of their size, their length. They've had a lot of time to prepare. One of the first teams after you stop at the Sixers, everybody else kind of counts out the Pacers, right? And they're the team that's right directly behind them in the seeding. When you look at the fact that not only did the Pacers show out against the Sixers, but they were without their all-star, Domantas Sabonis, and without their starting point guard, and Malcolm Brogdon, who recently got injury in a scrimmage, right? So they did all of that. They had Aaron Holiday get a double-double. I think he had 15 and 10, 15 points and 10 assists. And Miles Turner didn't even have a great game. But I know for one of the next topics, we're going to talk about something else. So I'm purposely leaving out the star of the night, right? I'm purposely leaving him out. Right. But holy moly, did the Pacers show out last night. I did not expect that. That was an impressive game to me.
And the fact that TJ Warren scored 53 points last night.
Yes.
The Phoenix Suns traded him for cash.
Yes, they paid the Pacers to take him.
For cash.
They paid the
Pacers for cash considerations. We can't make this stuff up. I was like, this is weird. Yeah. So, the player that has impressed you.
Excellent segue. And again, I'm glad we waited until last night because most players that have been impressive, we expect them to be impressive, right? And so, like, when I look at this and I evaluate who I expected to do well against what the actual outcome was, TJ Warren. And this is why I left him out just a second ago, right? You mentioned he had 53 points. Not only did he have that, he had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, and only 1 turnover. He shot 20 of 29 from the field, 9 of 12 from deep, and he was not known as the three-point shooter, right? And 4 from 4 for the Lions. So he got all these numbers without even really getting fouled a lot, which kind of speaks to how impressive that is. Because if you see a 50-point game, you're expecting this dude to get 15, 20 trips to the free throw line. No, he was just killing it. He was just killing it last night. And he completely overshadowed another big performance, right, in Joel Embiid, who finished with 40 and 20. That 40 and 20 stat is impressive, right? Completely overshadowed by TJ Warren's 53-point outburst that, again, I didn't expect.
No. No. Yeah, and I remember because I was watching the game. I was watching, what was it? It had to been the Lakers game. Or it might have been I think it was it was the Lakers game. I think it was and I think it was like maybe the first, second quarter. It was like TJ Warren had like 40-something points. I'm like, what?
Right?
Matter of fact, after we did the show last night,
the
game came on, and then I'm seeing like TJ Warren had like 40-something. I was like 40-something points. I thought I was reading something wrong.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was just, and again, they did it without Domantas. I mean, and that's probably why he had so many points, right? Because they were without their all-star Domantas Sabonis. That offense looks completely different with, Sabonis and Turner paired together, and Brogdon too, right? So right. You only have one. You have a limited, Victor Oladipo, who was kind of on the fence whether or not he wanted to play, but he was going to have to give up $3 million if he didn't. So, convinced them enough to, want to play in some games, right? So basically the responsibility of the offense just fell into his hands, and he did not disappoint at all.
Yeah. So, what is the team that has disappointed you?
Man, I talked about this a little bit, and I think it has to do with how they've handled their franchise player, and that's the New Orleans Pelicans. Because if you consider everything that the NBA did for this offseason, right? Not only did they just bring in the playoff teams who deserve to be there, but then they said, okay, I think a large part of the decision-making for this whole play-in tournament scenario was because the Pelicans were right on the edge of being the 8th seed, right? Hypothetically speaking, right? Because the strength of their schedule was super easy. I think it was the easiest in the NBA when you look at their remaining games. And then you look at the Grizzlies, one of the toughest, if not the toughest. So I think the NFL did a little reaching there the NBA did a little bit of reaching there because 4 is just such a weird number, right? Like, why would you say you have to be 4 games back, right? Like, I may be a little OCD in saying this, but if I was to pick a number of games back, it would be, 1, 3, 5, 10, 15. You know what I mean? Like, who goes 4? You know what I mean? And it just so happened that the Grizzlies were 3.5 games back. So I think that they kind of catered that scenario to get the Grizzlies to at least try to be in there. That way you see Zion Williamson and LeBron James square off in the opening round. Like, how great would that be as an NBA just casual fan to bring in an audience, right? With all that being said, for Zion to only play 15 and 14 minutes in both of the games, especially when that opening game was a very winnable game against the Utah Jazz. And you saw what Oklahoma City did the night after, or, just last night against the Utah Jazz. They completely dismantled them. So if Zion Williamson, and I get you want to restrict him too, right, because of his injury history, because he's almost 300 pounds and he's super explosive, why not stagger his minutes to where he's closing the game? You know what I mean? Like, they're completely mishandling him. And now the Blazers are just doing well. They beat the Grizzlies, who is their competition, right, for the 8th seed in overtime, with Melo having some sort of resurgence. So with that being said, the easy answer to me is the Pelicans. They were a completely disappointing team so far in the bubble.
Yeah. And like you said, he was out for they was gone for 4.5 months. So it's like they had the rest. And then now it's like, right. So no, it's crazy.
Yeah, and you saw the pictures of him on social media being all like cock diesel. So you were like, oh, he's been taking this layoff seriously.
Right, he good. Yeah, he good. Mm-hmm. We like, first thing we like, oh, he good, because that was the biggest question mark. Well, he might come in a little overweight, a little heavy, might have a little quarantine weight, but no, he was solid.
Yep.
Yeah, so he was doing something to at least get more than 15 minutes a game. You would think.
Yeah, but, absolutely. Yeah.
So, the player that has disappointed you.
This one breaks my heart. Coach, because the team that he plays for is who I have coming out of the East. And they still very well could, right? It was only a game, right? But Jason Tatum, his performance was completely just, you only lose by 7 points. The game was actually closer than that. You know how the NBA finishes games, right? Where guys, they want to get the ball back, so they foul, teams make free throws. The game it was much more closer than the end of the game, the end of the score would indicate, right? Mm-hmm. If Jason Tatum has half of a game of what we're normally seeing, they win that game.
Yeah.
He didn't even have that. He didn't even have that, man. He finished with 5 points on 2 of 18 shooting, 0 for 4 from 3, and only got to the free throw line once and only finished 1 of 2 from there, right? And if you look at how he did, his all-around game wasn't bad. Finished with 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block, right? Those numbers are fine. You love those numbers. If you want Jason, if you're a Celtics fan or you just like Jason Tatum, you love those numbers. I think that he'll turn it around. I think that, opening game, different teams are taking this play-in tournament differently. Obviously, I think the Celtics would have loved to come out and beat the Bucks. I think that would have been a statement win for them. Yep. But they still have time to turn it around. But golly, for your star guy to only finish with 5 points and the game was winnable, and he shot 2 of 18 from the field, it was just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one of the guys where we looked at as the X factor, where we can, if Boston was going to make a solid run, it was going to be on the back of a guy like a Jason Tatum. So maybe he can rebound from that, or who knows? But
I think he will.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that this is what I mean.
Yeah,
I don't think he'll shoot 2 of 18 the entire.
I hope not.
No,
because they'd be gone. They'd be gone in before Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. So
100%.
Absolutely. So I wanted to pick your brain.
Yes, sir.
So I want to know your top 5 athletes of all time.
Yeah, and just for anybody watching right now, I did clarify with Coach before this, right? This is my favorite. This is not who I think the best athletes are at their sport or anything like that. This is who just little Stephen Gillaspie enjoy watching, growing up or even now still enjoy watching. Number 1, I mentioned earlier that my boyhood NFL team was the St. Louis Rams, and Marshall Faulk. I mean, if you watched football at all, I don't really need to tell you how good Marshall Faulk was in his time. I mean, you look at what NFL running backs do today. He was doing it in the 2000s, right? Like early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. You could run him. He could catch. When they drafted Steven Jackson, they had a split backfield. He could, he can even give you some blocking. Just an elusive running back, just super fun to watch. He's one of the reasons why they were the greatest show on turf. Played in the NFL for such a long time. Didn't start with the Rams, but did finish with them. So that was beautiful to see because you don't really see that all the time, especially with running backs, right? He was just a super fun running back in the NFL. And then a guy that I try to model my NBA game after. Obviously, I'm not as good as he is, or I wouldn't be sitting with you, Coach, and wouldn't be. I would just be in the bubble right now, right? That's all it would be, right? But Steve Nash, his ability. His ability to run a team, to score when they need him to score, pass when they need him to pass. Wasn't a great defender, but watching him, just multiple time MVP. And I wrote a little bit about this on my MVP discussion earlier. If assists matter more than points, then you can't argue with the MVPs that this man had because he's one of the best passers of all time. Creative, elusive. I mentioned that with Marshall Faulk. He's an elusive guy, just kind of squirmy, could get where he needed to get. Just super fun to watch, and a guy that all my behind the back passes I credit to him and Jason Williams, right? So, third favorite athlete, Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, I still love him as a broadcaster now. Just when Barkley's getting in his skin, he just shows him his hand, and say, "Hey, you got any of these?" No, okay, be quiet. Love that. I love their banner. But as a player, man, like if you go back and if no one has ever seen how this man played basketball in Orlando, do yourself a favor, finish the show, and then go watch Shaquille O'Neal highlights in Orlando. Because you could easily see him translating in today's game so well based off of that Orlando film. Because there was breaks, man. Like he would get a rebound and push a break and could pass. I posed this question to a couple of people who cover the NBA, but just asking, do centers now, are they truly better passers than they used to be, or are they just given more freedom from their head coaches? You can look at certain players from yesteryear, and Shaquille O'Neal is one of them. His vision was solid. Just his role as a big man back then was, just to dominate. And you see what Giannis is doing in the NBA now.
Right.
With the exception of, just taking people off the dribble, Shaquille O'Neal just in the paint, like, good luck. Ben Wallace, I think, was one of the only guys who could really, truly put a hurting on him and make him change his game a lot. But, he was one of my favorite guys to watch. And then to get in the world of boxing, Jermaine Bad Intentions Taylor, fellow Arkansan. So, there's a little bit of bias there. But, again, this is my favorite.
Absolutely.
Middleweight championship of the world for such a long time. Bernard Hopkins beat him twice, and that was basically the last that we got to see him in the world of boxing. But in his prime, man, Jermaine Taylor was just, oh, man, he was just such a fun. Again, when you're done with the show, go watch Jermaine Taylor highlights.
Oh, yeah.
and come back to Coach and say, yeah, man, Steven was right, because this dude was just such a terrific boxer. And then to close it out, I went with a current athlete, and again, I can say this because it's my favorite, Aaron Donald. He may go down as one of the best defensive linemen of all time, and he's just getting started. He's plug and play. You could put him anywhere on the defensive line. You could put him on the end. You could put him in the middle. Heck, if you wanted to, you can put in a 3-4 set, put him at an outside linebacker spot, and he would just murder people. So just good luck stopping him. You need 2-3 people to do that. And then he just opens it up for everybody else to go at the quarterback. So, and he stopped the run too. Like, that's the other thing. Like, you normally see guys who are great run stoppers or great, pass rushers. He can do it all. So those are my guys.
Yeah. Impressive list. Very impressive list. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we'll put a bow on this week's Sunday sit down, man. Your final thoughts.
Final thoughts? Man, I'm just glad that the NBA is back. I've seen a lot of people. I think the cool thing to do is to try to overanalyze things in today's society, right? Like, okay, like this is cool, but the audience or the fake crowd noise is whack, or the camera angles, I don't like them because they're not the way they've always been. Like, okay, man, like be thankful that you have a professional sport to watch. You know what I mean? Like the NBA is back. The talent, like every game that anyone cares to watch. Like, I think there's only been a couple double-digit games up until last night. And last night, I think the Clippers Pelicans was the only one from last night, if I'm not mistaken. I think I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it, but there hasn't been very many double-digit games when you consider the entire scope of the league now. And you can say, the turnovers or whatever. Like, all the games have been fun. All the games that I've watched have been fun to watch. They're probably going to continue to be. I mentioned earlier, I think what the NBA is doing as far as, social justice is incredible. I've seen a lot of feedback too about like how they're supporting these organizations that, you may not agree with or whatever. But if you just listen to what the players are saying, though, if you listen to what they're saying, they're not saying anything that you have to get overly political about. Like, it's a right and wrong thing. The kneeling or standing for the national anthem. Like, I'm an active duty sailor, you know what I mean? And like, people will say, I respect what you do, which is awesome. I appreciate that. Much love to everybody who feels that way about the armed forces. Right. But kneeling isn't, I don't take that as disrespect. Now, I think my stance has evolved because, to be honest with you, Coach, I used to feel that way. I used to think it was disrespectful. But if you instead of just feeling that way and getting stuck in your echo chamber, and you watch your news circuits and everyone's saying what you agree with, if you take a step out of that and just just listen instead of just having a counter argument already ready and just listen, it's not as disrespectful. It's not disrespectful. Because these players, they love the armed forces. No one's saying anything negative about the armed forces at all. None at all whatsoever.
Right.
But the players that are kneeling, much love and respect to them. That's what makes our nation great, especially because they're not disrespecting our nation. They want our nation to be better. Like, that's one of the biggest acts of patriotism that you can have in my eyes. But the people that want to stand and the people that want to say, that everybody's lives matter, that's true, right? But I don't think anybody's arguing that. No one's saying that your life means less than mine. It's just that mine means as much as yours, right? Yeah. And that's what these players are trying to get across to people. And I think that that's great. I respect everybody's decision, man. If you want to kneel, that's awesome. If you want to stand, that's awesome. Right. If you want to have an open, honest discussion about your religion, cool. I'm with it. I'm a Christian. I'll talk Christianity with anybody who wants to talk about it. And I wholeheartedly mean that, but people get too overly critical. And I think at the end of the day, just be glad, man. Be glad that you have something to watch, man. And if it's different than how it used to be, it's probably for a good reason. Right. You know what I mean? Like, if players are talking about things that they used to not talking about, it's probably for a good reason. Because if we can always say things aren't the way they used to be. Well, the way things used to be for everybody wasn't the same as what you experienced, right? Like, your used to be may have been great, but mine or yours, Coach, may not have been.
Right.
So you have to think past. You have to take your blinders off. You have to think big picture, and at least respect and understand and listen to what people are saying. You don't have to agree with it. Give them the time of day. That's all I'm got to say.
Exactly. And I definitely agree with you. And it's one thing, like you're saying, people will say something, about how it's just different, but be lucky that you have this opportunity to watch these games, because the way things might pan out, this might be the last time you might see a league from start to finish for the foreseeable future. So take this, enjoy every moment of it, and savor it, because who knows how long everything will go back to quote unquote normal. We don't know.
We don't.
We think we know, but it's like everything. We thought that the league, the league was only going to be shut down for a few weeks, not 4.5 months,
right.
almost
like
5.
Longer than a typical off season. Like, this is essentially a new year if you look at like how long the breaks normally are.
Exactly. So, Steven, where can they find you on social media?
Absolutely. And before I do that, Coach, much love to you, man. Much love to all the Off the Ball family. You guys, you treat me right. You treat me better than I deserve. So I appreciate you having me on today, man. But, for folks who want to find me, our website just launched yesterday. So you can find us at allaspectsports.com. We cover the NFL, NBA, MLB, NCAA, and MMA. Great content. You can find podcasts and articles on there. If you're just looking for me in particular, like you mentioned earlier in the show, Coach, I host the Breaking the Game podcast, which is scrolling across the screen right now. You can find me anywhere. You can find me anywhere you get your podcasts. And you can follow me on Instagram at Stephen W. Gillaspie. And you can follow me at Twitter at Stephen AAS, which, stands for All Aspect Sports. So, and again, just appreciate you having me on, man. It's always an honor and privilege when I get together with you, brother.
Yes, indeed. Definitely appreciate you for coming on this special Sunday sit down with me, man. Definitely appreciate it. And we're definitely going to be doing some work down the line. These lists, everything that's going on, man. We definitely going to, it's going to collab a lot more now. But yeah,
yes,
man,
sir.
definitely appreciate you for coming to join us on the Sunday sit down this week, man.
Dude, literally, you can hit me up any time of day and get me. I'm addicted to this stuff. I hustled before I got on here to, clean, get the kids right, do the dishes, laundry, whatever I need to do to be able to be on here. You let me know when you want me, man, and I'll do everything I can to make it happen.
Absolutely, man. Definitely appreciate you. And this has been this week's Sunday sit down. Definitely appreciate our guest, Stephen Gillaspie from the All Aspect Sports and Breaking the Game down.
Yes,
breaking the game with Stephen Gillaspie. Yes, slip of the tongue, but
hey, man,
yeah,
I meant what you knew.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been this week's Sunday sit down, man. We'll see you guys next season.
Much love, everybody.
Yes, sir.